My name is Warren Rosenthal. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. And I found out about the program off of a sign, an overworked investor sign. I tried to do this on my own for several years and kind of failed at it most of the time. I knew I had the skills to be able to make it work, but I think the thing that was really the most was I really felt like I needed somebody to help me, more like a mentor, somebody that can get me started in the right direction. And I knew at that point I probably could take it and make it work right for me. Well, I've been in the program a little over probably seven months. And at this point, I'm at the point where I can do between 3 to 5 deals a month. And I've been able to completely replace my income doing that. After I started working with Joe, I did my first deal in a week and a half. But what happened was there was a gentleman who had a good cash flow because he had a good income from his work, but he just couldn't qualify for a mortgage, and he was really looking for a house for his family. So by me being able to show this gentleman this new house, he was able to get into a house and with very little money down, and what it did for him was helped him and his family get into a home, and now he's actually working with a financial advisor and a mortgage broker to be able to cash out and close that deal. Well, I make about, per deal, I make about anywhere, probably about $2,000 to $2,500 per deal. I have a list right now of over 600 people that are on my list, so it makes it pretty simple. I just have to tell everybody about that property. I blast it out to them, and then I start showing the property. At first, when I first started off, I would go to the want ads in the paper and just find people that were selling their house for sale by owner or people that were renting properties. And I would just ask them a couple of simple questions, like, would you consider selling your house with the rent-to-own method instead of just renting it? Or somebody that was selling their house for sale by owner, I would call them and ask them, had they considered, if the property has been on the market for quite some time, would they consider selling their house rent-to-own versus just selling it outright? And most of the time, a lot of the people, you know, between 2 to 3 would say, you know, out of 5 would say yes, and they would consider more. And then it was a process of either working with them over the phone or actually going out and meeting them. And as I got better and better at it, I did a lot more just working with them over the phone. The main thing that I need to do is show them the value of working with me, where I can actually add value to them and help them to move a property quicker by me being involved in it and not just themselves trying to market the property. So first of all, I show them that it works really well for them because it costs them nothing. By working with me, I'm not adding any additional costs, but I am adding extra value by marketing their product or their property alongside of them, which doesn't disadvantage them in any way. It just doubles the marketing effort that they're doing. What happens next then is they're pretty motivated by that time. It kind of weeds out the ones that aren't motivated and they just don't really want to do anything in that category. So after I start to talk to them about then I just show them the value of working with somebody that has marketing skills at this point to be able to build a list of over 633 people on my list at this point, where I can blast that property out, plus the other proprietary websites that we use to be able to market that property out, because most of these people, they're just amateurs at it. They're just for sale by owner or for rent, and they don't really know how to get their property out to the masses. And then at that point, I show them the value, how by working with me, there is no extra cost to them, and they like that, of course, because a lot of these people, if they're selling their house for sale by owner, it's probably because they just don't have enough equity and enough room in the property to be able to sell it with a realtor. It would cost them money to be able to close. But with me, it actually wouldn't cost them anything. And I probably can get them a better value because I can usually get them more money for their property than they can if they would have sold it with a realtor. But now, I've used the push button method where I actually have somebody that works for me and for a very low amount hourly wage, where all she does is find people on the different sites out there on the websites like Craigslist and some of the different websites. And then we have a form letter that she emails to them, and then they can go through my system and then email me back and say they want to consider more information. And then my system will give them more information and completely lay it out for them before I ever even have to speak to them. Well, with the for rent method, we're selling the house on terms. So people are coming to us because they have an issue. Mostly it's a credit issue of why they're not just buying a house outright. So in order to, basically we know there's two ways of buying a house. If you buy it cash, you can usually buy it significantly discounted. But if you don't have cash and you need to go by terms, then you have to go by those terms. And the thing is that the seller is in control at that point, and they dictate the terms. And so the buyers are ready to take those terms because they don't want to buy, they don't want to rent a home, they don't want to rent an apartment, they actually want to own something. And it might take them a year or 2 years to be able to qualify for a mortgage. In the meantime, they're sitting in a home or an apartment that they're just renting, but by doing it this way, they actually get to go into the house and start to work on the house. They can paint it, they can add a fence to the home, they can do all these things. So in that 2-year period of time while they're trying to qualify, they're already setting this home up for themselves, so they're 2 years ahead of the game. And then when they cash out and buy the house, it's theirs outright. So they get all the fruits of their labor. Every so often I do get emails back from these individuals, and they say things like, thank you, I couldn't have done it without you, you sure are a great blessing. These are actual words that they use. So by doing this, this happened to be one of the best jobs I've ever done in my life because of the gratitude that I get from both sides, from the sellers and from the buyers, be able to put the seller and the buyer together and to help these people. And to really help people and make money doing that is what my life's work is all about. One of my favorite deals was a deal where, and you'll hear about this when you take the program and you start to hear Joe talk about these things. This was one of those houses that you could probably qualify or you can qualify as a fixer-upper special. And I think it was a little beyond that. It was a pretty messed up, dilapidated house. And the reason why this one was so fun, and it gives me so much joy to be able to have done this, is because the gentleman that was trying to sell the house was he was almost at his wit's end. He was probably going to let the house go, and he just didn't know what to do, and he didn't have the money to fix it up. So I asked him to let's just go ahead and put a sign in a lockbox. We'll send people through it, and we'll market it as a fixer-upper special. First, there were several people that had gone through it, and then the first person that actually really wanted to buy the house or to rent to own it, they were all set to do it, and then their finances fell through. And what was great about this is this process is I had other people in pocket, and you'll learn how to keep a pipeline going and of other people besides the 1 or 2 people that came to that house and that show a lot of interest. This way, you'll know it's never a done deal till you actually collect the checks and sign the contracts. So right that same day, when they pulled out of the deal, I knew I had other people in it, and I was just about to call this other individual. Within an hour, they called me, and they said, is this house still available? I really want it. And then they were the ones that ended up going into it. And they were in a situation where they had been out of work for a little while, so they had some additional bills that hurt their credit. So they weren't sure about how long it was going to take them until they could qualify for a loan. But they just did not want to live where they were living anymore, in apartments and rented houses, because they weren't up to the quality of what they wanted. They wanted more control of their living arrangements so that they could do work. So, so what was so great about this house is it fit their needs so well, because they were able to go in and do all the work. Like I said, it was pretty in bad shape, and they needed to do the work, and they took that house and made it their own. The great story about this whole thing is that here's a house that we thought, the seller thought he'd never even be able to sell ever because it was in such bad shape. Within 6 months, at this point when we speak now, this woman is working with a broker that I teamed up with, part of my team, and they're going to be able to close this loan probably the end of this month. So she's actually getting the financing and buying this house outright within 6 months. On that deal, I made $1,500. And the way I get paid on that was when they put the down payment down, that was what they could afford, $1,500. I was happy to take that because it's a little less than I would have liked, but I was happy to take that because the seller really needed to sell that house and to get somebody in there. And so I stopped the pain on his side. He had a payment that he had to pay every month. Now I had somebody paying that payment for him. Plus, he didn't have to dish out between $5,000 and $8,000 to get his house fixed up. They were taking over the complete fix-up and repairs of that property. So I made $1,500 doing that, and I was glad to do it. And I have a happy seller who's been telling all his friends about me, and I have a happy buyer who's telling her friends about me. So therefore, that's going to build momentum for my business in the long run. The thing that's so amazing about this property is the people that think that you can't do this remotely, this is about an hour and a half away from where I live. I've never seen the house, not once, only from digital pictures. I never even put the sign out of the lockbox. I had the seller do that. I asked him to go to a warehouse, a hardware store, and buy a sign, and I told him what to write on it, and then he bought a lockbox and put a key in it. So I had never even been to that house. So I physically didn't even have to do anything as far as putting signs up. I probably only had about 2.5 to probably 3 hours worth of my time total into that house. So I made like $500 an hour. The most I ever made at this point is $4,000 off of down payment. And I have two deals that made $4,000, one just now recently and one about 2 months ago. The one 2 months ago was a gentleman who was trying to, he just wanted to move out of his home. He didn't want to live in that area where he lived. All his family lived in a separate part of town, and he wanted to live closer to his family. And I was able to find a buyer for that house. And that was a great unusual story, or a great success story too, because the first tenant buyer that I found for that house ended up not being able to do it because when we searched out her credit report and her background a little bit more, the seller decided that she wasn't quite right for that. So and like we do in these transactions, we put the seller in control of the transactions. We work with them, and we help them, but they do have the say. So I had to go ahead and put somebody else into the home, which was pretty amazing, because then I got an email within hours of somebody desperately needing a home because she was in a deal, and she was with another investor, and what happened was he was going to go ahead and buy a house, but his financing fell apart. So she was supposed to get that house within 2 weeks, and she was already in the process of moving out of her house to move into this house. So she was pretty frantic about getting a new house. So what happened was it worked out perfect. I was able to put her into this home, and her credit worked out perfectly, and all the process worked out completely perfect. And within 2 weeks, she was in this home, and I made $4,000 off of that. And I would say I probably put 2 hours into that. All I had to do is put a couple signs out, and then I just put it up on my website. And I just have to tell you that the websites that I use right now and the leads where I get my leads from, I pay absolutely nothing for that. I do all of that free on all the free websites out there. I make the $4,000 on the down payment. When they come up with the down payment on a rent-to-own situation, we basically dictate what the down payment's going to be. Now, it's usually based upon the area, the monthly rent that that house is renting for, or the monthly payment, and then the value of that home. So when somebody comes to me and they say, you know, I would like to have a house and I need to have a down, I need it, you know, how much is the down payment? My first question out of their mouth is, well, how much have you prepared for a down payment for a house like this? And then they would say, you know, oh, I don't know, maybe I have 3,000. I said, well, if you had 4,000, I could definitely make this happen. And then she said, okay, yeah, I do have 4,000, I could do that. So then when she comes and puts a down payment down that goes towards the purchase price of the house, that down payment is what my company uses to get paid for our services. The great thing about it is if he told me that the house, he needed $150,000 for the house, what I would do is I would put the house up for $154,900, and then I would expect that I could get somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 down payment. So when I do collect that down payment, it comes off the purchase price of the house, and then I actually got him a little more value than he wanted out of the house, and he loses nothing. Like I said earlier, the great value of working with me is it costs them nothing on the purchase price side and on the marketing side. I never charge them for what I do. The seller got a qualified buyer, tenant buyer. I worked all the contracts, so I set all the contracts and dictate all that for them, so they have to do nothing on that part. They have somebody that's working with the broker right now so that they can cash out within 2 years so that he can actually sell his house. He got completely the value and a little bit more of what he wanted for his selling price, and it didn't. All it took him was to say yes to my question of would he be willing to sell the house rent to own. That's all it took him, is yes and a couple of phone calls, and the deal was done. The way I do this without a realtor's license, see, in Joe's course, he teaches you how to use the certain contracts, and he supplies all these contracts for you. And one of the contracts that we use is called a lease option memo, and it makes me a principal in the transaction. This way I can do this without being a licensed realtor. It actually gives me a stake in the property. It makes me a principal in the deal. And then all I have to do is, when I go ahead and sit down to close with the tenant buyer, I have an addendum to that lease option memo, which transfers that right that I had, that principal that I had, to the tenant buyer. It's a very simple two-paragraph contract. It transfers it over, and at that point, I am no longer in the deal. I've transferred my principal rights to the tenant buyer, and the rest of the contracts are between the tenant buyer and the seller. 633 at this point, yeah. Well, Joe, I got to tell you, it's pretty simple and it's pretty inexpensive. And at first, Joe will tell you that you have to do some of the grunt work up front, and that's what I did. I did what he said. I followed the directive, and I went out and I bought those ugly signs that you'll hear about, those yellow corrugated signs in some of the racks, and I went around and put them on telephone poles. I put them on corners. I did everything I knew to be able to put those signs out. That started to generate a list for me right at the beginning with barely any money out of my pocket to be able to do that. And then eventually what I've done is gotten to the point where I've been able to build a system now, which Joe offers, is the push button system, where that just works on its own. So I have these houses. When I find houses, I put them up on the websites, and I generate leads from there, and those are free leads, and I get probably I'd say between 15 and 25 people a day contacting me about the homes that I have. I used to call them all personally right away, because when I first started the business, I had more time to do that. But now I've gotten so busy with the amount of transactions that I'm doing, I don't have time to call everybody back. So the great thing about the push button system is it keeps emailing them and auto-responding to them about different things, the different levels of the program that we have available. And at this point, a lot of times what I do, and I get to check the messages. I have somebody right now that I've hired to write up all my messages, and they print them out for me so I can just scan them, and it takes me a lot less time to just scan over a message than to listen to the actual message. So I read the messages now, and then I can pick which ones I want to respond to right away. If I have some properties I know I need to move quicker for some reason, or if I can tell by the message that they're a better quality lead, I will probably contact them back myself over the phone. Otherwise, I let the push button system continue to give them messages, and essentially I let them call me. When they're ready and they're motivated, then they call me, and at that point I know that I have somebody that wants to go ahead and do this. Before I did invest in real estate, I've had several businesses that I've owned in the past, and I've done some, did some sales work for some companies. I sold some programs and things like that. But the biggest chunk of what I've done for my business career was I owned a service business, and had several crews that worked for me. To replace my income full-time as an investor, it didn't take me very long at all. It only took me about a month in this program. I was pretty motivated to do this because I was, at that point, I was pretty frustrated in what I was doing. Even though it made me a six-figure income, I just wasn't happy doing that type of work that I was doing. And so I was pretty motivated to make this change, and I changed it pretty quick. So I did it in a month's time. It's been consistent, and it's actually growing. As you do this, you'll get better and better at it. And I'm at the point now that I've been doing it for around 7 months that I'm starting to come into my own, and I'm starting to, it's smoother and smoother for me. I'm getting better and better and smoother at it. And my time on the phone and my time with sellers and my time with buyers is much quicker because I'm able to word my sentences that they're much more powerful and they're pithy, so that I can get my point across in a lot shorter of time, so that it enables me to spend less time doing this work, but I even make more money doing this job because I'm better and better at it. So I do more and more transactions than I did, say, even 3 months ago. In my old business, I worked, it would depend. Sometimes I would work 8 to 10 hours a day, and there were hours that I really didn't like to work. I didn't like to work those hours when I had to work. Sometimes I had to work a lot of evening hours because I was working with people and I had to call them. But what's great about this business here is I can just go ahead and put it to the side for 2-3 hours a day, a pop if I want to, or even a half a day, and I can tell my wife, hey, let's go ahead and take the kids and let's go hiking. We have a park close by our house. Let's go hiking in the woods. And I can just shut it all down, go hiking in the woods, and then come back and pick it up at any time. So that's the greatness of what I do now, is I'm in complete control of my time. And I guess if I wanted to be in complete control of my hours, I can do that too, where I can only work so many hours a day. But right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to build it to the point where I can put it on autopilot, and my time frame right now is in about another few more months. I gave myself a year to learn how to do this right, and then I'm going to put it on autopilot. I'm just about there right now. What it means is that you get the push buttons method system in place. I have a gal who answers my messages for me. She even emails back, and we'll get some. We have some basic questions that we get now that we've seen over and over, so we answer them back with a pretty much of a form that answers those questions for them. But really what I'm trying to do is get them to go to the website, because the website will inform them with the audio and the written script of everything they really need to know. So it answers about 99% of their questions. When they come back from that, all I need to do is then, at that point, the specifics of the property that they want to talk about. That's really only what we need to talk to about at that point is the property and not the process, okay? But next, what I'm going to do to make it go on autopilot is I still have to talk to those people, and I have to make those phone calls a lot of times, and sometimes I even need to go out, put a few signs out. I do that less and less now because I generate so many leads without the signs. I do that less and less, and a lot of times I need to go out to a home and take pictures and these type of things, and I'm just going to have somebody do that for me. I can hire somebody very inexpensively to be able to do that for me. Well, I'm working about, on average, 35 hours a week, and when I said I expect to put it on autopilot, I expect to put this end of the business on autopilot and let this part of the business build itself. But then I'm not going to stop there, because the greatness of this business is there's levels, and this is just the foundation. Joe will teach you, and this is the most important part about having a business, is having cash flow, because you can't really do anything. You can't build a business without cash flow. So when you need a new computer and these things, you don't have to worry about that. You have that money and you have that capital to be able to do that, to build the infrastructure of your business. Then the next step is I'm going to go ahead and build wealth. See, the cash flow and wealth are two different things, and I understand that. And at that point, when I start to build wealth, is when I'm going to start to buy properties or pick up properties subject to, which Joe will teach you how to do. And at that point, I'm going to keep those properties and build long-term wealth to have a residual income coming in. So that gives me multiple streams of income. Well, subject to is it's explained pretty clearly in the course, and the great thing about it is you don't have to use any of your own money to do this. You're just helping people who are in distress right now because they can't keep up with the mortgage payments of the property, or they need to move because they got a job transfer, whatever reason why they want to be out of their home, they need to be out of that home. And what you're going to be able to do for them is to be able to take over the payments of their property. So you're not actually buying the property, you're taking over the payments of the property and getting the deed subject to the mortgage. And then what I do at that point is the same process as the rent-to-own process, is I just find a buyer for that home, a tenant buyer on a rent-to-own. So at that point, they're going to give me a down payment of $3,000 to $6,000, which goes right to my pocket. And then when I get the home subject to, like I said earlier, we talked about terms. Well, I'm going to be able to get full market value for that property. So if I took over the property and it was a $130,000 house, and they only owed $115,000, I'm taking that property over at $115,000. So I've already built that equity into the home immediately, and I might even be able to get more than 130 because they're buying it on terms. So then when they buy that home and they cash out at the end of the contract, 1 year, 2 year, whatever the contract would be, I also make that money on the back end. And that's why it's long-term wealth. Now, if they don't buy the property and I continue to keep the property continues to go up in value, and which is good because it continues to appreciate, and I continue to make more money that way on the back end. Also, I can charge a higher rent. Well, it's pretty nice to be able to drive the carpet highway to work every single day. You know, people say, well, what's that? I say, well, the carpet highway. I get out of bed, and it's about 20 steps to my office, and there I am in my office. My messages are already written out for me. My push button method comes through the email, so I have all these emails leads that are sitting right there of people wanting to see my houses, and sellers offering to do the method, the rent-to-own method for me. So I wake up in the morning, I have all these things already set, and then I just go ahead and start that process. And I can go into that office anytime I want. Some mornings I like to sit out and especially in the better weather days. I like to sit out in the backyard and read the newspaper, drink a cup of coffee, and hang out with my children and my wife. And we homeschool our children, so we don't have to get up and go drive the hustle and bustle, traffic, or any of those things. As a matter of fact, I really just don't have to deal with traffic very much at all, because when I set my appointments, I set them in the middle of the day so that I'm not on the rush hour parts of the day, the morning and the evening. So my day is a lot more calm than normal when you have to get up every day and fight traffic and go to work and deal with those types of situations. My wife and I, like I said, we had owned businesses in the past, so we had already been in the entrepreneur mindset. So my wife she was really pretty supportive, because, and I got to tell you that we've done some programs and they just didn't work for us, so we failed, but we never quit, and that's the important thing. And in this program here, Joe will tell you that you just don't quit. If you do the work and you put the work into this process, this process does work. You just can't quit. So I didn't have to convince my wife too much, because she was pretty much of the mindset of supporting me in my decisions in business ventures. And my family and friends, they kind of knew that we've decided to go and do our own businesses. So they already knew that we were kind of off the beaten path, and plus we homeschool our children and do these type of things. So people used to think of us as odd. And it's really funny, because I think my neighbors probably wonder what the heck I'm doing half the time, because I can be out in my yard just hanging out during the day playing with my kids, and I bet you they wonder, how does this guy earn a living? So I work any hours that I want and anytime I want, and I love that freedom, and it's pretty special to be able to have that. That freedom is worth a lot more than a double six-figure income would be. I'd rather take a little less money and have the time with my family and my friends that I can enjoy at this time that I can now with the freedom I have. Yeah, it's exactly my goal here, and this has been. I have to back up a second. This actually has been a dream of mine ever since I've ever started the business. I always wanted to deal with investing in real estate and owning property. Like I said, I just didn't know how to do it, and I tried and I dabbled into a few things. I failed, I succeeded. Most of the times that I succeeded because I just kind of stumbled into it, not because I really knew what I was doing. Right now, I feel like I really have a handle on that. So the process that I learned in Joe's class is going to teach me how to build long-term wealth to the point where I can retire, and I don't even have to do any of this work. I can either have people in place and have the business still in place, making a cash flow, or I can have the amount of properties that I need that will continue to pay off and bring me a residual income where I can be anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, and I'm still making the same amount of income, never having to be concerned about a business at that point. All right, well, ring, ring.
Hello.
Hi, Joe. This is Warren Rosenthal. I see you have your house here for rent. Joe, I was wondering, would you consider selling your house rent to buy instead of just renting it?
Perhaps.
Okay, great, because at this point, I have a list of buyers that would be interested in buying your house with this method, a rent-to-own method. I have over 633 people that are highly motivated right now and could rent your house. Now, these are people that might not be able to buy your house outright right now, but in a year or two, they would be able to qualify for a mortgage and then buy your house.
How much do you charge for that?
That's a great question, Joe. It doesn't cost you anything to work with me. My services are absolutely free. I get paid by the buyer. And the reason why that works so well is because I get paid from the buyer and the down payment that they put down for your house.
So how does a lease option work?
Lease option is a pretty simple process, and it works really well. I do 3 to 5 of these every month, and it's very simple and very smooth. The simpleness of being able to do a lease option is it just takes a couple of contracts. I find a buyer, somebody that's interested in your home, and then they have to be able to qualify within a year or two, and I do that already before I even start this process. I have them pre-qualified and ready to go, that I know that they can qualify for a mortgage. And then they just have to be able to have a good income coming in to be able to pay the payment on the property, the monthly payment, and then have some money for a down payment.
So how much can you sell a property for?
I can sell you property for the full market value of the property right now because we're selling it on terms. So we really dictate what the price is. Do you have any idea what your house is valued at right now?
It's probably around 150,000, a little less because of the market.
Okay, right. Now, how do you come about that price of about 150? Do you know that because of the other homes in the area that's selling for around that price?
Yeah, I'm in a subdivision, and next door there's a house that's just like it, and it sold 2 months ago for that.
Okay, that's fantastic. Now, do you have any idea of what you think your house would rent for monthly?
About $1,200 a month. That's what I'm asking.
$1,200? Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, what is your full payment with tax and insurance and your mortgage payment? What does that cost you per month?
About $975.
$975. And you're looking to rent it for around, did you say $1,200? Okay, so you want to make a little bit of cash flow. So we have a little bit of room there. If we go ahead and put that up, and I have no problem, we'll go ahead and put it up for the price of $1,200. And we can probably bring 3 to 5 people to that house within the first week.
Sounds pretty good. Do you have the paperwork for that kind of thing, or do I have to come up with that?
No, the great thing about it is it doesn't cost you a dime, and I also have all the contracts set in place. These contracts are all been certified by attorneys, and they're all legal for the state that we work in, and it's a pretty simple process for you. All you have to do is just sign the lease option memo, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out and put a sign in your yard, and I'll explain more of this as the process goes. Put a sign in your yard and put a lockbox on the house so that I can have access to the house. Now, is this house vacant or do you live in it?
It's vacant.
Okay. Vacant property is good because then I can get more people through the house. I don't have to set up an appointment with you, so that it works out really well that way. Because really, the process is the more people I can have looking at your house, the more likely we're going to find a buyer, and we're going to find one quick.
But you've got 600 people right now that are interested in buying a house in that area?
Yes, sir. And what I'm going to do immediately is when I get the lease option memo, and I have a link that you can just go ahead and sign it electronically online, and you can set the price like you said, and the purchase price of the property. Then at that point, then I can blast that property out to every single one of them within hours.
So let me see if I understand this. You're going to give me the price that I'm asking for. You're going to charge the seller or the buyer for the lease option fee or the down payment. They're still going to owe me exactly what I want. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get the first month's rent, and you're going to get me my deposit.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you the first month's rent, and because it's a rent-to-own situation, there is no deposit. Okay, there's only a down payment. That's a non-refundable down payment. Whatever we receive for the down payment is what my company keeps for its services. This way, it doesn't cost you anything for the process, and that's how we make money. But the great thing for you is that when they put down that down payment, they put down a pretty decent chunk of change, say $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. That puts a lot of skin in the game for them. And that's why it makes this a different process than just a rental process. This is a rent to own, so there's a complete paradigm shift with the people that I work with that are going to come into this home, because they want to own this house. They're going to treat it like they own it, and then they're going to take care of it like they own it. You know, a great example I always use is when you rent a car, right? Nobody ever washes a rented car, right? But when they lease a car, even if they're not going to buy that car in 2 years from now, they lease it for 2 years, they're going to take care of it like their own. So these are the type of people that I'm bringing to your home that have a process and a mindset that they're going to go ahead and own this home and take care of it. They're going to ask you questions like, can I paint it? Can I do these things? And all these parts that these are adding value to your home, and also showing you that these people are more serious about taking care of your property. They're going to be emotionally tied into the home, they're going to be physically tied into the home, and they're going to be financially tied into the home. That's much more important, because on a rental process, they're really not in any of those ways tied into your home. And that's why most of the time they don't take care of the property.
How likely is it that they'll actually exercise their option?
That's a really great question. To be honest with you, the actual national average right now is about 30%. Now, I would like to see my percentage to be more in the 50% range. The reason why I believe I can make that process higher, or the percentage higher, is because when I work with these people from the very beginning, I have them working with my broker, and he not only is he a broker, but he's also fixes credit. So he's going to start with them at the very beginning and show them exactly what they need through this process to be able to fix their credit and to be able to outright buy the house or get bank finance so they can cash you out.
So it's not really likely that they'll buy it?
Like I said, it's about 30% national average. Now, if you think about this as an investor, and if they don't buy in 2 years, is that a good thing or a bad thing for you? Well, it's really a good thing, because if they didn't buy in 2 years, and like I said, they have the mindset of taking care of that property, so most likely I have people who added fences and put in new carpet and did all these things to the house, so they added value to your home, and now they're going to walk away from the home. There's a possibility they do. Let's just say they do. At that point, 2 years have passed, your house is appreciated, they've paid down your mortgage, so your house costs you less, it's appreciating at the same time, and it costs you nothing because they're paying your payment. And now what we can do is turn around and put somebody else in there, because I'm very confident in my talents to be able to put somebody in that home within weeks to a month. And then we'll be able to charge a higher rate rent because 2 years have passed, and your house will be worth more. So instead of that original 150, maybe it's worth 159 now, and we can get more money for the property. So if you think about it, if that happened 10 times over, you're actually better for that. Now, that's not my goal. My goal is to help you to be able to have your house cashed out in 2 years, and the buyer to be able to really own a house, because that's what they wanted. That's what they came into this process doing. They didn't want to just rent. They really wanted to own this home. And I take it very personally, and I work very diligently and side by side with these people so that they can actually be successful and carry through on what they actually wanted to do.
So it's a 2-year lease option?
What's that?
It's 2 years?
Usually it's 1 to 2 years. Now, we can do a 1-year renewable. The reason why I say 2 years is because my experience right now, I've found that most of the people that are coming into this process need about 2 years to clean up their credit. Now, that's not always so, but I like to give them enough room to be able to make this happen. I'll know usually right off the bat with my broker when he does their credit report. He comes back and he uses words like, I can do this in 6 months, or they're doable in 12 months, or they're doable in 18 months. So if we knew they were doable in 6 months, then I would do the contract for a year and just give them a little bit of leeway. If he came back and told me it was 18 months, I would do it in 2 years. But that's always in your control. I'll always come back to you and give you this person on paper. I will show you exactly where they stand, and you and I will discuss whether this person's right for your home or not. I will give you my opinion on it and what I understand according to how I work my process, but I'll also always give you the last say. So you're always in complete control of this situation.
Well, I'd like to have a 2-year or longer lease. I mean, if I'm gonna get somebody who's gonna lease it, the longer the lease, the better, so I don't have to have a vacancy and worry about it re-renting it again, if they're not gonna exercise the option.
Yeah, the longer the lease, the better it is, you're right, for yourself, because the least amount of time you have to be concerned about it. If we did a longer lease, that would be fantastic, although, you could make more money if you do like a 2-year lease, because then if they don't buy the house, and let's just use an example like this person's a great tenant, you've never had any problem, they pay the payment on time for every single month, they've never been late, and 2 years pass by and they actually have been working on their credit, but they're still not there, they're still not ready. See, the great thing about it is you're in control, it's your property, you're in control at that point. You can extend that lease for another year or 2 years, and at that point you can ask for a little bit more money on the rent, and you can ask for a little bit more money on the selling price. So it puts you in control throughout this whole situation.
So if I don't like the tenant, I don't have to take it?
Absolutely. Yep, you're in complete control. When I show you that lease option memo, it's just a one-page memo. It's going to show you exactly the process and how much control you have. I call it my stab in the back contract, because you could actually turn around and take that tenant buyer from me if you wanted to, and I really don't have any recourse. Now, I know that's not going to happen because you're an honest guy. My point is, the way I want to show you this right now is, my point is that you don't have to stop doing what you're doing to market your house. I found you because you were marketing your home. You can continue to do that process alongside of me, and I will not compete with you, but I can tell you that I have a pretty decent process going on right now, that I'm very talented at what I do, and I'm probably going to find somebody quicker than you can for the home. Plus, it doesn't put you, I know you probably have a full-time job, and then you have to answer all these phone calls when you come home, show the property to people, run over there, and then they don't show up, and you have to deal with all these headaches. Put all those headaches on me, and I'll take care of it, because that's what I do full-time. And I have a system set in place that works very smoothly.
Well, it sounds pretty interesting. What do you have to do to put it together?
It's real simple. I'm going to go ahead and send you a link to sign that lease option memo. I have that online, so you can electronically sign it. Once you sign that, all I have to do is go out and put some signs out in the area, or put sign in your yard. I'm going to ask you to give me an extra key so that I have access to the property, and I'll put a lockbox on the house.
All right, we'll email it over. I'll take a look at it.
Okay, well, actually, I don't even have to email it. All I have to do is send you the link, and then you can just go ahead and go on that site and read it over yourself. And then I have the way the website's designed, I have a complete explanation of it. You probably already saw that. Did you remember going to the website that I had when I first sent you that email?
I don't really remember, no.
You don't remember? Well, what I can do is I can go ahead and send you that link, because I think it would be very valuable for you to be able to listen to that. There's a quick audio message on there, and then there's scripted out below it. I'd like you to go ahead and listen to that and scroll down and read it at the same time, because it's going to explain the whole process to you again. Even though we went over it over the phone, I want you to hear it in that light, because I do have it laid out, and if I missed anything in this conversation, I know it's not missed in there, and it will answer 99% of your questions so that you're fully informed. And most importantly, I want to make sure that you're comfortable with this process, so that when we go ahead and move forward, because I'm very aggressive in my marketing, at that point, as soon as you say okay, I'm going to be out there marketing that property. And I can tell you, sometimes I have people within a few days, and it's going to be, it might shock you. So I don't want you to be shocked. I want you to be ready and fully convinced that this is the way you want to move. What the really neat thing about this is, if somebody's not really, basically it either makes sense to them or it doesn't. And you're going to have the real tough ones that it just doesn't make any sense to them right now. But time and circumstances changes a lot of things. And I've had quite a few people who might have said no to me at that point and are saying yes to me 2 and 3 months later. So they've paid a few payments and they realize that that's a little bit painful for them, and then they want to consider what I have to say. Because a lot of people that are selling their house, for instance, for sale by owner, if they just put it up on the market, they haven't even had a chance to even see if what they're doing is going to work. It might take them about a month or 3 months when they don't get any showings or they have one showing every 2 weeks to realize this isn't going to work. I need to do something else. The important part about this process, because of the push button method, which works so well, is once they sign up on the list, that email or that autoresponder is going to keep asking them, I'm interested in your home, are you ready to go? I'm interested in your home, are you ready to go? And at some point, they're going to respond back to that. And that's the good thing about it. I never lose them, and I don't have to keep track of that and continue to call them back. I let that process work automatically. They don't send me the memo within the next day. I usually give them a call the next day and ask them if they, where they stand with it and if they've been able to make a decision. And I can tell you this, what I've found is as I get better at it, more people do it right there and then with me on the phone. I've found that the more you do it, the better you get, the more confident you are in your abilities, the more confident they are that you could do this for them, because that's really what it is. They just want to know, can you do what you say you're going to do, and can you make this happen for them? Because they're really dealing with some pain right now, and that's why it's important to ask them questions and find that pain and pull that pain out to the top and during that conversation, so they can see that they have a payment that they're paying every month on something that's not paying off for them at all. And once they can see that and they can realize that, I feel that that's the most valuable thing you can do for that person, because then you can start to help them. And I like that. I like to be able to help people. That's what I do. I help people, both sides, sellers and buyers. First and foremost is to start, listen to the course and start taking the steps, one step by step, and starting at the foundation and what Joe will suggest you do first. First and foremost, you have to build a cash flow, but you have to do the grunt work first. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call people. It's cheap. The phone is the cheapest thing you can have. You already have one in your house and you're already paying for it. The newspaper is cheap. You can go to the want ads and start calling off of those. You don't have to go out and spend a lot of money with this at first. That's the most important thing. Don't put that pressure on yourself by spending a lot of money at first. And then the next thing is getting some of those signs. They're cheap. You can get signs for $1.50, $2 a piece, and start putting those signs out and generating those leads. That's the most important thing that you can do right now. And then just build your confidence and get smooth with the process. Joe gives you some scripts that you need to, that is in place in the program. Follow those scripts and read those and get really smooth with those. You could even practice with your dog or your kids or your wife or the tree in the backyard, and get good at it and get smooth, because that confidence level is what you're going to need when you go ahead and do this process. Yeah, what I like to say is right now, doing this process, I'm building a cash flow and I can see the end game, and that's the important thing. I can see where I'm going with this, and I'm getting better and better at it. And I can tell you, like I said earlier, this is the best job I've ever had. I'm the most happy. My wife even comments on how my other jobs that I was kind of a little more grouchy, and I would come, get off work, and I wouldn't be as wanting to do things with the family because I just didn't like what I was doing. At this point, I'm so happy. I got a text the other day when I checked on a house that I placed a tenant buyer in, and I just wanted to check if everything went smooth over the weekend with the move. And she just wrote me back and she said, "Thank you so much. I couldn't have done this without you. You've been a great blessing." And I mean, that's it. That's my pay right there. Plus, at that time, I made $1,500 on that deal, but I could have taken it for free just because of that one comment, because of the confidence level and how it made me feel in my job. So I love my job. I love what I do, and I can do this forever now because of how much I love to do it.